Hi, and welcome to the channel. I'm Marco from Hellforge Studio, and today we're gonna talk about the guitar sound from Vulture's new album, Sentinels. For demonstration purposes, I chose the song Where There's a Whip, There Is a Way. I think the song is especially great because it has some nice guitar riffs, including some palm mutes, including some open chords, and including some 16th notes. So let's dive right in and listen just to this part that I chose. Alright, so first things first, we are listening to the guitars on their own. And then I think we should just get a look at each individual plugin we used for each guitar player, respectively each guitar track, because as you can see we have 4 guitar tracks here in this part, not throughout the whole song, but quite a lot. So I think it's important to just have a look at those as well. I think I need to put off automation here. Alright, I think we start with THU overload plugin, and as you can already see, there's going on quite a bit. We start off with 2 EQs. To show how everything sounds, I will bypass each individual element. Yeah, not the cabinet of course, not the amplifier of course, but all the EQs. Now we are just listening to the amplifier and the cabinet. And also, let's put off all the processing that's coming afterwards. And also, yeah. Now this is the dry guitar sound, the main guitar sound, the main dry guitar sound. And already you can tell there's quite a lot of room information in there. And for that, let's have a look at the cabinet. And it looks like it's just one single SM57, but there's 2, and they are on top of each other, I think. Yes, exactly. The second one is way lower in the mix, but have a listen to both. Main SM57. Second 57. Both in the mix. Off and on. And notice the second is in 45 degrees angle. So what I notice and what's it doing for me is we are eliminating the fizz from the first mic and putting the second mic way lower in the mix, so we just adjust the EQ curve for the first mic. And then one thing you might have noticed, I've put the rear on as well. It's a neat thing inside THU to have like a microphone that's miking the back end of the cabinet. And I think it gives us really nice room sound. And I hope we can listen to it in solo and isolation. Yes. Yeah, and those three mics together are this specific kind of Vulture tone, and also something that I really like to do in each of my recordings. Having one microphone on the amplifier that gives the direct sound, having a second on there just to make the EQ curve a little bit smoother, a little bit nicer and not so direct. And then a third room mic on a distance, or in this case in the back, which gives this spacious vibe and also this nice mid bump that's going to help have like this dynamic and natural feel to it. I think there's nothing, or at least not much, to say about the amplifier. It's the Randall Lynch box. It's the George Lynch signature amplifier, and I think, yeah, we chose it because we had this idea for the album as a reference track, having Dokken, the Tooth and Nail album, but don't quote me on that, he used an old modified Marshall, some Plexi, and this amplifier, his signature amp, is like an emulation of his old 80s and 90s amp. What is maybe something special, what you can notice about the settings is that there's no mids on the amp, but we still have quite a lot of mids in the sound, which is due to the cabinet, of course, and also due to the mic technique. Because as you can see, I'm not right on the middle, I'm more to the side, getting a darker tone, and then also the second mic is in a 45-degree angle, you have to imagine, which also further kills the high-end fizz. So we should have quite a lot of mids just from the get-go. So no need on the amplifier itself. Let's have a listen again. Yeah, as I turned the mid knob, it's just getting in the mud and this dirty kind of feeling. It's not the mids that you want in the mix to have the guitars shine through. It's more like this dirty and, yeah, something that you would expect from a Marshall. But other than using a Marshall, you don't really need the mids to have enough gain. With this amplifier, we don't need the mids at all, especially when we engage all the EQs that I have in this chain. So first EQ is like the standard tightening up EQ, which I would usually just do like this, even in a real miking scenario. So let's have a listen. Yeah, it tightens up the sound further. Giving more aggression and more higher mid focus. And also you can really hear, if you take down the 1.6K, you get an even more focused, more fresh metal kind of guitar sound. But that's too drastic for this album. Especially when we are engaging the second EQ as well. And you might notice we're taking out a lot of mids here, and then we're putting in more mids there. Not exactly the same bands, but we're doing this kind of opposite effect. And that's usually not because I couldn't do it in one EQ, but because while tweaking the sound in the mix, we noticed that we needed more mids, but didn't want to destroy our old settings. So this is not something that you have to do. You can just use one single EQ in the front and you're good to go. But as these things sometimes happen, you might want to lower the lows first, and then you want to bump some lows back into it. And you want to switch in between the versions, and also you want to directly compare both EQs to one another, or not both EQs, both EQ bands, for example. So let's engage the second EQ. Yeah, making it more full, more direct again, even though we've kinda working against each other here. But now the interesting part is the second equalizer, or second and fourth. Again, the fourth came way later, I think, into the picture. But the second is this one, and I usually like to do this in a real amplifier scenario as well, to just have a second EQ in the effects loop. And as you can see, I'm kind of doing the same as I did with the first EQ, dipping the mids and also regulating the lows a little bit. But one thing you will notice in the effects loop, it will sound way, way different. as you can hear, this is way more drastic than in the front of the amplifier, and we are getting this classic 80s thrash metal scoop. To many people today, this is a very undesirable sound, and they don't really like how it feels in the mix as well, but also it's way overboard in solo. On certain hi-fi systems, it can start to sound weak and very narrow. And in the mix, we noticed it was too thin, so we got another EQ in there. This time a parametric EQ, just to be more precise, to actually be in control of what we want to achieve with the equalizer and not be bound to specific frequency ranges. Let's listen with the fourth and last, not the last as you can see, but the last EQ before the cabinet. Yeah, we're getting back all these nasty mids that we took out in front of the amp, and also from the amp itself, where we just could get like mud, and bringing it back in the effects loop right before the cabinet just reduces the mud. We have this focused sound from the mid scoop, but then we bring in back the mids a little bit, just a little bit, to even out the frequency response, so we actually get a normal frequency response when played through the cabinet. All right. So afterwards, and I think you will be quite shocked when you see this EQ curve, but I can explain. Looks wild, and it is wild, but this is an EQ match from the Dock and Tooth and Nail album. We tried to have something similar played and then compare those two, let them be compared by FabFilter Pro Q3, let it imagine the EQ curve to match those two together. Of course, this does never really work. Especially important is we don't want to copy the album. I mean, on the one hand, we have different guitar players, it's different music, so it will never sound exactly the same. But also, we don't want that. After you get this EQ curve matched, there will be a lot more bands, a lot more kind of nonsense bands, even in the very low end and very high end, and more notch EQs, putting little bumps in there. And I don't really like that, but as you can see, especially in the mids, I took over this very, very strange EQ, and as you can see, very, very strong cuts, like 6 dB here, 6 dB here, 6 dB here, 13 dB, and 9 dB. This is very extreme, and that's on purpose, because, you know, with every guitar sound, especially from the 80s, you will have a very distinct mid character. And we already made our own very distinct mid character, but this was not quite enough, because we want this more phasey, chorusy, almost broken kind of guitar sound, and you can achieve this with a bad equalization technique. As you see, it's not even in linear phase or natural phase mode, so this will naturally kind of destroy the guitar sound that we built. I will start with bypass and then bring it back in. Yeah, listen to it, how it gets very narrow, very broken, and even kind of nasally sounding. And that's actually what we want. Even though we're gonna work against that again. Here we're getting more directness. And in the SSL channel, more directness, not working. Yeah, more clearance again, getting rid of some mids. And putting back in the low end, what we kind of lost with this EQ. And then good old Andy sneak trick. Let's see on the palm mutes. As you can see, it's just working on the palm mutes and, well, also on the big chords, but way less. So this is just to tame the low end and to give it a little bit of this pumping feeling. And then VTM, I think it's not doing anything. Yeah, no distortion, just tape emulation, just for smoothing out the frequency band, getting some low end in there. Same goes for VMR. Yeah, no distortion. And that's kind of the main guitar. I will come to the bass afterwards because it's really just working as a bass. But we have a second track for each guitar recording. And as you can read, well, this is the main guitar and this is the room track for the main guitar. Let's have a listen to that. Yeah, and this is really nasally, kind of awkward sounding. This is all on purpose because we only had the rear mic and the THU. We needed another room mic to emulate this really far away and nasty closed off room kind of vibe. We don't want this big room, we want this 80s tin can kind of feeling. And that's achieved by a standard room mic and just finding where the sweet spot is. And you don't really need a good room for that. The purpose of the mic is to sound bad, as you could hear. And I think it's the same THU setup. Yeah, a little bit different in the high end on the last EQ, but everything else looks the same. Cabinet, of course, off, because for the cabinet, we have another impulse response here. It's the soft tubes Marshall Silverjet. As you can see, we only have the 251 mic in here. And that's, of course, classic condenser microphone as the room sound. Then our EQ again, but this one is not as crazy as this one. This is just to get it in the mix to sit better, because we wanted more low end, which we didn't have in the direct guitar sound. Again, this is on purpose. We don't want the super tight low end from the direct guitar sound. We want the developed and smooth low ends from the room mic. Also, it was a little bit too direct because with this kind of AR features, you always get this, well, kind of fizzy and direct sound, and we wanted to remove some of this harshness and directness. And also, we have a lot of direct tone in the direct close mic. Then I will show you how it sounds without this, and then engage it, and especially showing how the low end changes the tone. Now in the full mix. Even though we're mixing it in at a very low volume compared to the direct mic, we're still getting a lot of vibe from it, still getting a lot of nice sustained and also, well, 3D and dynamic kind of feeling going into the depth without delay or reverb, although there is a lot of it on there. Yeah, speaking of which, yeah, before we go into the delay, we're engaged in the second guitar here. And interesting part is they are both exactly the same. Same setup, no changes, at least I'm very certain. Same setup, different guitar player. No, I'm talking shit here, because this is the second guitar from the left, and this is the real second guitar. There's a trim. Okay, yeah, just adjusting the input gain. Everything else seems to be the same. Right, even on the room tracks, yeah. Not adjusting the input gain on the room tracks, kind of interesting. Yeah, only difference is we're using the SSLE channel and then we're using the SSLG channel. That's just for some coloring purpose. And all the other differences come from the play style of the players, which I really like to do. And before we engage the effects, I want to show you the compression. Yeah, even though the compressor is not doing that much, you can really hear how it's pumping. Each more aggressive chord that's punched in, and also notice when only one guitar is playing and then the second one comes in, then you get this really nice punch to the sound and get the more jumping out of the speakers kind of feeling. And then there's two more EQs on there. The first one is just doing some high-end. Again, that is something that happened in the mix, I guess, because, well, in the full mix we noticed there was some high-end missing, I guess. And then this one, yeah, just getting rid of some mid-mud, I think coming from the room mics, just 1 dB, as you can see. And then there's automation as well. All right, and this is also automation just on this part. So let's put in back the automation as well. And yeah, I think, yeah, this is even further reducing the mids and pushing some low end in because we have this palm mute chuck kind of riffing. Okay, coming to the effects. They're quite easily explained. First, we have the pulsar echo rack, which is a classic 80s tape delay. Not much to explain. It's in 4th notes, just I think, yeah, 1 delay, rather low feedback, so we don't get this echoing swell, just a nice slapback kind of feeling, and then also drive just to muddy up the frequency response of the delay, so we get this kind of, yeah, smeary and warm kind of feeling. I think that's it for the delay. Just a trim afterwards because I didn't want to touch the fader. Maybe some automation, I'm not sure why. And then we're using Denise Audio Perfect Room for the room, which I rarely use, but especially for old school kind of stuff, this is really nice because it sounds very plain. And I want to show you how just the reverb sounds, so you know what I mean when I say plain. It has this kind of waterfall feeling. It's very, very dense and also very tin can-like, and this has this 80s metallic and cold feeling to it. And I think that's perfect for this kind of music. So let's have a listen to the guitars again in solo. And bypassing the effects. And you can notice how much of the mids that we EQ'd out of all the tracks, you remember we had like 4 EQs in the amplifier, 2 in front, 2 in the loop. And each individual were cutting some mids, some were boosting some mids, and also we had no mids on the amplifier itself. And then, after we did all this very, very tight and sculpting EQ, getting this really punchy guitar sound and very direct and aggressive guitar sound, we put in back the mids through the effects. And this creates this really nice depth where we have this back and forth between the direct guitar sound in the front, and then all the mids coming from the back. One last listen, but without vocals and without the solos. Alright, this was Vulture's guitar sound from the album Sentinels. I hope you've learned something, and I think there's something special about the guitars here because we have this on the one hand, very 80s and unique, scooped fresh kind of sound. And then on the other hand, we have this as well 80s, but more on the heavy metal and well, this classic power speedy kind of vibe with all the mids and this tin can reverb and delay effects. I think this goes to show that you don't need to mic up a cabinet and a real amplifier to get a real guitar sound. You can get all the old school kind of sounds and all the realness of an amplifier just with plugins. Of course, I do like to record real amplifiers, and you can push around microphones for days and have fun and everything. But this also gives you so much freedom and so much flexibility in the mix, and not only in the mix, because I don't really like this aspect to being able to change the guitar sound afterwards, but I like to change everything else. You know, we decide on the guitar sound and then we can automate each and every individual parameter and fit the guitar sound not only in the mix, but also for each individual part. And that's something that you can't do with a real amplifier, except for recording multiple different guitar sounds and then blending them for each part. And that's something I like to do as well, but it's never as fast and never as intuitive as you can do nowadays in the digital world. Let me know what you think about the whole digital analog thing, if this settles the stuff. If not, I personally don't care. For me, it's all the same as long as it sounds great. And I think this is a great example for sounding great and sounding analog and warm without using actual analog gear. So, thank you for watching.